So today I want to talk to you about, basically, I want to take you back to year one, Josh. And what are the biggest lessons I learned in my very first year that I believe propelled me into the success that I would eventually have? Okay. It is important to know that in my first year, I didn't actually have any success, but these are the lessons that set me up for year two where I did have success. And I'm just hoping that, like, if you could learn from me and Mark and everybody else, that we can get you there way faster than we got me there. Because I wasn't even using social media. Like, I was just meeting people for a coffee in person. And for some of you that might work, but if you saw pictures of me at the age of 30, I look 10. I look like a 10-year-old. I didn't have a beard yet. So I'm like a 10-year-old sitting down across from a business person. Like, and every single session was powerful. Like, they literally were like, oh my God, that was amazing. Whatever you just did, that was amazing. Like, I don't know what you're learning from this John Maxwell guy, but like, keep doing it. But they just weren't like ready to pay me money because I was a fucking child to them. And I love my kids, but I'm not going to pay them money to give me advice, right? So these are the three lessons that I just like fully embraced. And obviously there's others, but if you said, Josh, what are the three things you learned that changed your life more than anything in the world? This is what it is. Okay. And we'll put a fun sales and marketing spin on it later. But honestly, this is a little less sales and marketing, and this is a little more just like growth shit. Okay. So number one, hopefully you've all heard me share this, law of the lid. It's like, gave John Maxwell my money and he said, go buy my book. And I said, are you fucking kidding me right now? Like, I just gave you all my money. Now I have to go buy a book. That's why I send you books for free. Because it feels real weird to pay that kind of money and then have someone tell you to go buy a book. But I was like, all right, whatever. We're doing this. Just trust him. So I went on Amazon, ordered a used copy of the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And I was told I had to read it 3 times in a row before I was allowed to do other things. Which is why in the best version of you, I say in chapter 1 to read it 3 times in a row. And that was a great lesson, by the way, to realize that reading a book once means nothing. You got a couple cool quotes, a little bit of good information, but reading something 3 times in a row, it becomes a part of your soul. Mm-hmm. Like, I got to the point where literally sometimes I would just be talking to someone and I would just be like, this isn't true coaching, but it's still helpful. I'd be like, oh, law of momentum, oh, law of this, oh. And it's almost like I could like pinpoint someone's issue by knowing which law John Maxwell had taught me. And like their problem identified so quickly. To me, it was like just putting together like as quick, it was like a math equation for me, right? It's like 2 + 2 is 4. And to other people, like, oh, what? But to me, like I was literally like as a part of my soul. But the law of the lid without the law of the lid, none of the other stuff would have ever happened. Because John Maxwell said, you'll never be more successful than your ability to lead people. And I still don't know how the fuck I got what I got out of that, other than just sometimes there's some divine intervention happening we can't explain. Somehow, some way, my brain was able to kind of like separate the word leadership. Because I think if you're reading that book the way he says it, it sounds like this is just a leadership lesson. But for me, I don't know why. My brain immediately removed the word leadership. And what I heard was you'll never be more successful than your ability. And for whatever reason in my brain, I processed like your ability is something you do. Like you'll never be more like we're talking about a sport like basketball. You'll never be more successful than your ability. Well, then I guess I got to practice more. So it turned into like this immediate controllable thing. And it was in that moment that I like went into later, just like a trance, like literally a trance where I saw every leader I'd ever seen in my entire life blame their lack of success on other people. The guitar shop said we can't compete with Guitar Center because they're open on weekends. And in my head, I'm like, could you maybe like be open on the weekend? It was essentially they didn't want to do what other people were doing to have success. They wanted to complain about how it worked for someone else and not for them. And then my buddies who owned a coffee shop, and they would complain about people who like Starbucks. People don't like coffee these days. They just want like sugar. I'm like, well, maybe you guys should have a little more sugar around, you know? Like, if that's what people like to spend their money on, just give it to it. But to them, it was like, no, coffee is an art. This is a craft. And we can't change it to them. They need to change to us. There's sales and marketing so much built into this, isn't there? And I remembered how in churches that I served my whole life, the pastor was always like, if people would show up on time, if people would give more, if people, and the whole time I'm just like, but I think there's some things we can do better. I think there's some promises we made that we're not even fulfilling. So why would they give us more money? Like, why can't? And even though my brain always naturally kind of questioned these complaints, I never had a full clarity around it until I read this statement and I realized, oh, all of these people have struggled because instead of taking some version of responsibility for their need to grow, they just pointed at someone else and blamed that. And it was sitting right there. There's a couple promises, 2 or 3 that I made to God that I will never forget. And one of my promises was I will never, ever, ever blame anyone else for my lack of success. From now on, it's me. If I don't like something, it's my fault. If something isn't working the way I want to, my fault. Now, of course, this is where head and heart becomes really important. There's a really big difference between judging and shaming yourself versus taking responsibility. Does that make sense? This is kind of what I told the M&M girls yesterday, is that every single challenge is just a question to be asked. Like, we didn't make as much money as we wanted off of that launch. Turns into, what could we have done better? Where did we miss it? What are the holes that we can fill in so that next time we get the result we actually wanted? Every single challenge is just a question. And that's it. But if you're not willing to take full ownership, instead of it turning into a question that challenges you, it turns into a complaint that separates you. And this is what most people do. They're literally, our limiting beliefs are constantly looking for a story to justify our fears and excuses. And so what I did was, instead of seeing what someone else was doing it and using it as an excuse for why I couldn't do it, I just asked myself, what is it I could do to achieve that?